Hi guys, and welcome to this week's video. So it's kind of a sketch with me video and kind of not, because I'm technically doing a sketch with me video, except I'm not actually sketching in my sketchbook. So what actually happened was last week's video kind of inspired me to do a more completed and long and involved kind of illustration, so something that had a little bit more planning, a little bit more thought that went into it. So that's kind of where this piece started from. So I basically did some sketches on some rough printer paper, and then here you can see me tracing it onto my watercolor paper using a light box. And the reason I'm doing that is because watercolor paper doesn't handle erasing very well. I don't know why. It just kind of does something to the paper when you erase on it. And I suppose you can do it without, like, do a watercolor illustration straight onto the watercolor paper if you don't erase. But the thing I found is that with watercolors, if you go over them if you go over the pencil lines with the paint, you can either smudge your pencil lines or like lock them in so you can't erase them afterwards. So in order to avoid all of that madness, I pretty much just did the sketch on normal paper. I got my watercolor paper, cut it to size, did everything, masking taped it to my other paper on top of my light box, turned it on, and traced it. Super simple, just to keep all of the rubbish and baggage that comes from sketching straight onto the watercolor paper, and commitment. It takes a lot of commitment to sketch straight onto there. I even did it in sections because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Anyway, I digress. So that's pretty much what you're watching now. Yes. So what you're seeing me do here is test the color. So what I did is I mixed the color in my palette, and then I took a scrap piece of watercolor paper and I just tried the color out, because it often looks different when you've mixed the color to actually what it would look like on paper once it's dry. So that's what that was. And then basically what happened was I thought that I would do this in a more cell shading type style for this illustration. And then as soon as I put that first block of color down, I thought, ooh, it doesn't match. Because the painting, well, the composition and the subject matter and everything's quite soft. It's not a hard, stark, vibrant, lots of movement kind of piece. It's very soft and peaceful and tranquil and protected and, you know, that kind of stuff. So when I put it down and it was so harsh, I was like, ah. So then what I decided to do was change my technique a little bit and use a much softer type of shading. So the way that I achieved this look is I basically did a lot of layering. So I started out very soft and very light because I didn't want to go in too dark or too bold too quickly. So what I did was I would have my color on my paintbrush and I would paint the darkest part of the color. And then what I do is I dip my paintbrush back in my water and get a little bit of the color out of the bristles, and then go back and blend it out until the water was running clear on the page. So that's how you get that feathered out, smooth kind of coloring. It's the same kind of technique that you'd use when you're creating a wash or a gradient, going from dark color to no color at all. So that's pretty much what I did for the color. So in this next bit of footage, you're just going to have to excuse the blur. It's one of the longest, most interesting pieces of footage, so I couldn't not include it, but it's not quite in focus. But you'll pretty much see what's going on, so we're going to ignore that. So basically what I'm doing in this bit is I'm making the bits that are underwater a little bit bluer. I don't know if that's how it looks in real life, but I wanted to make it look different between the bits that were above the water and the bits that were underwater, because basically she's lying in like a little shallow basin or pool of water, so I needed some way to differentiate between the bits that were submerged and the bits that were above water. So other than that, I'm kind of getting the tonal values right. So in the bits that are in shadow, I'm making them darker, and I'm trying to keep the bits that are highlighted as light as possible. And then here what I'm doing is I'm adding red bits. So I don't know if that really makes any sense, but basically what I do is, well, it's done now, but I added red to the bends and the ends. So I don't know, when I draw people, they tend to look a little bit dead until I add some red bits. And I find that the nicest way to do that, or the most realistic, or the bit that looks the least weird, is to do it in the places where you bend, like your corners, and the bits where you end, like fingertips and toes. So I do knees, shoulders, elbows, the tips of your nose, fingertips, ears, you know, bits where your body ends and where it bends. Then I basically just layer the colors until I get to the tone and the color that I want, because I generally don't get it the first time round. And then I go into the leaves. And basically throughout this piece, and something that I suggest if you work anything like I do, is to get the tones right and the colors right, is to not work on one single piece of the painting at a time. So I jump around a lot. I paint the face, I paint the bum, I paint the arm. It's all because I need to get it all even. And if I do one piece with lots of layers until it's completely finished, then it's difficult for me to get all the bits to match. So maybe that's a tip for if you're having an issue. And then here, what I'm doing, is it's actually a vintage hairdryer. It looks like an embossing gun, but it's not. It's just a super ancient hairdryer. And I just use that to dry the paint in between layers, because it gets a bit tiresome waiting for it to dry. And then basically what I did is I finished the foreground completely, pretty much to the colors that I wanted the watercolor to achieve, and then I covered the whole thing, or at least the edges of the whole thing, in masking fluid. And masking fluid is great. I really enjoy it, especially if you get one that's not colored, because then you can pretty much leave it on and it won't stain the paper. And basically what I use it for is to get even washes. So I don't want to paint the background around the foreground, because then it's difficult for me to get it even and flowy and nice. And it's just easier to do it this way, because it allows me to paint over some of the finicky bits. So all those small little fine lines that I don't want to get paint on, I just cover with masking tape and then I peel it off. And then the paint doesn't get on those bits. And honestly, peeling masking fluid is super satisfying, because it comes off relative, at least the one that I use, it comes off pretty easily. I haven't really had any instances where it rips or stains the paper, and it's honestly the best feeling to like reveal your painting from underneath the masking fluid. But yes, and I don't know if you can really see it in this footage, but you'll see it in a bit just now when I remove the masking tape. But basically what I tried to do was create sections of light and dark in the water of the painting to make it look like water. Because if you look at references of water, there's like lots of contrasting bits next to each other, which make the reflections look like reflections. So if you are interested in seeing a video more in depth on how I draw water, please let me know in the comments. I'd be interested in hearing from you. And then otherwise, I would just like to say thank you so much for watching this video, and I really hope you enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to make, and I'm really proud of this piece, so I'm glad someone got to watch it. And if you did really like it, you can let me know by liking this video or leaving a comment telling me that you did. Otherwise, you can always subscribe to my channel to see more stuff like this. I've got some other stuff on my channel as well if you just want to have a look. But otherwise, I will see you guys next week for probably another vlog, but we'll see when we get there. Have a great evening, week, day, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks. Bye.